Good morning.
Good morning. My internet is not working very well. I keep getting kicked out and back, so if I disappear, that's why.
Okay. Yeah, if it helps to keep your camera off, feel free. Alrighty, well, it is 10 o'clock and today is a discussion day. So before we do the group assignment, I thought that I would show you all what the people look like that you read for today. I think, again, this is very important to think about what does representation look like in psychology, right? In the readings that are in our book, etc., etc. So I'm going to share my screen here. Boop. Okay. So here is Allport, and he was an American psychologist, obviously did personality psychology, and he rejected the psychoanalytic and the behavioral approaches. So both all the stuff we've already talked about and what we'll talk about starting on Friday. So he was just like, no, we just need to focus on traits, as you saw from your reading today. Michel was actually born in Vienna, and his story is actually pretty similar to Freud's, although he didn't have to go to London. They fled to the US, and so he grew up in Brooklyn, but they did it because of the Nazi occupation. So he studied under Kelly, who we read about previously, and Rotter. His PhD, interestingly, is in clinical psychology, not in experimental or personality or anything like that. And he emphasized situation and self-control, and he's the one who came up with that marshmallow test that we watched the video of the other day. And then here are the authors of the Blackboard reading. So the first author is part of the Growth Initiative Lab. He really focuses on positive change following adversity, post-traumatic growth. So you really see that in the article. And then the really interesting thing about Corinne Zachary that I loved is that she was just a research assistant when she became second author on this really great paper. And now she's just starting a MSW/PhD program in social work. So very cool. I always love to see grad students represented, and not even that.
I love to see that researchers are getting younger.
Yes, that's also helpful, right? Yeah, most of the time when we look at this, we see just old white guys. Yeah. And so, I mean, when I go to conferences, this is pretty consistent with who I see presenting, we'll put it that way. But you don't always see that in the literature because it wasn't true for years and years and years, because it was hard for women to get into the field. It was hard for people who were not white to get in the field. So it's been great to see the increase in diversity and age diversity, obviously, too. And then Fleeson, interesting thing. So Zachary worked with, I'm going to butcher his name, but I think it's James Turner. First, and then she went and worked with Fleeson as a research assistant before she started her MSW PhD. So she was sort of the bridge between these two guys. And Fleeson is the one who does the research about morality, which is also sort of hinted at in this article. So it's sort of interesting to see how their influences kind of went together in this. He also studies symptoms of borderline personality disorder and the social, cognitive, and other mechanisms of traits. So, and this is obviously a huge, pretty influential article for a fairly young first author, which is always awesome. I love to see that. Again, I think it's always just helpful for you all to see what these people look like. And again, as you pointed out, a lot of them are older, although they might not have been as old when they started, right? And a lot of them have been super white and super male. So I've been really going out of my way. The way we're addressing it in academia, as we call it, decolonizing the syllabus. So for this year in particular, and this class in particular, I've really been trying to do that. Okie dokie. Well, let me get the link to share your assignment. Hopefully it'll be easier to get through this time because there's only 4 questions instead of 5. So I'll give everybody a minute to grab the link. And in the meantime, I will start setting up the breakout rooms. Yeah, I'll do 4 rooms today, bigger groups. Alrighty, it's 20 minutes. And I'm gonna go ahead and open all the rooms. Again, make sure you grab that link before you head to your rooms. And then I will see you all in about 20 minutes and we'll discuss everything. Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. Other people will be rolling in as we go here. Okie dokie, welcome back. I'm just gonna put the questions in the chat so that I don't have to screen share. I can see y'all a little bit better. Alrighty. So, do group 1. What do you think of Allpart's definition of a personality trait? And does it cover everything you think of as a trait? Why or why not? And what, if anything, do you think it misses?
Our group said that we agree with his definition. It's very in depth, and I think there's like 8 different components of his definition. So we just said that we agreed and felt like it covered up pretty much everything that we thought of as a personality trait.
All right. Did any other group have anything different for this one? Okie dokie, we'll move on to question 2. So group 2, looking at the last section of Michelle's article. It was after the stars on page 72 of your good old Pieces book. Um, what do you think of his argument? Does it seem to you, as the footnote indicates, that Michelle says that individual differences are unimportant? Or do you feel like he's saying something different here?
So we said that people have the same innate action and attitudes, but show them in different ways, and that it's difficult to draw a conclusion about an overall personality when it changes from situation to situation. Like he writes, a dependent person might not be dependent in all situations. And he uses correlation coefficients can help us draw conclusions about like related general attitudes shown by people, which like he uses throughout like the entire article.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Other people's thoughts on this? Do you feel like the community, the scientific community, has interpreted Michelle correctly? Or do you think that he's sort of gotten an unfair shake here?
I mean, we basically kind of went along with what Hope was saying. Like we mentioned the point, like I guess our traits aren't as powerful as we thought they were. So like a passive person might be super assertive in a certain situation that they're put in. Like, so we can't define ourselves based on the traits that we have. Because like I said, they may not be as powerful as we thought, and other traits might take over, and we were like, what the hell, where did that come from?
Right? Yeah, especially if you're in some sort of emergency situation or something where you need to be assertive, right? I can remember I was one of our editors of our school paper when I was an undergraduate. And we had a day where, like many of you are having today, we had some technology issues. The network went down. And we had like our office. So Kenyon, where I went to undergrad, is all this really cool Gothic architecture. And so our office was literally in a tower. It was great. But the nearest computer lab was in the basement of the same building. So I think it was like 4 or 5 flights down. And so I was just like, okay, immediately, like, you do this, you do that, you go down to the basement and do XYZ, you know, here's how we're going to handle it. And then like 2 minutes later, I was like, what just happened? Like, and my co-editor looked at me, he was like, I don't know, I've never seen you like that before, but it worked. So yeah, there could definitely be situations where you snap into what you need to do. And you know, step up to the situation, and it might not be, I'm not normally that directive or assertive, right? But certainly it was necessary in that scenario. Just like for some of you, if you've ever been in an emergency situation, had to help a loved one, you know, with a health issue or, you know, heart attack, heaven forbid, car accident, right? You may have acted completely differently. So yeah, I think that the person and the situation certainly both matter, right? Yeah, any other thoughts on this one?
Well, like taking stats, I'm not like really buying his whole thing that like it's still like a strong correlation, but it just shows that it's low because it's a large sample. Because even in like stats, like no matter the sample size, if your correlation is like 0.3, that's really low. That's a very weak correlation. So it's hard to get behind his whole, oh, it's a large sample size. That's why it looks so low.
Yeah. And it's particularly with large sample sizes, you're more likely to find significant results, right? So it's sort of a,
Yeah, so that's why I was like, I don't know if I'm buying that.
yeah, like I have just a couple data sets that are large. One that has about 400 people in it and one that has about 1,000. Typically my data sets are more like 80 to 100. And like in those, I found correlations that are significant at like the 0.12 level, right? I would never think that that was clinically significant, right? So yeah, it is sort of a weird argument. Yeah, other thoughts? Great. I love how you all are thinking through this. You know, it's certainly kind of interesting to look at both sides of the coin here. And I think Michelle almost like confuses himself, right? Because he's like, there's not traits, but I'm just going to call them something different, right? Okay, so group 3, what's your opinion about whole trait theory and how it tries to straddle the line between Alpart and Michelle? You even reference both these readings, right, in that particular article. And do you buy the argument?
Dr. Myers, can you say who was in group 3?
I think it was you. Let me double check. Yes, it was you, Dylan, Shamir, Amanda S, and then Debbie, who keeps getting kicked off Zoom. Poor Debbie. Back, it looks like.
I know, she's so sweet. Okay, so for this one, we pretty much said it is kind of like a happy marriage for both. It is newer than the other 2 articles, so their research is kind of fleshed out. It is like taking the different researches and putting them together as one research that is very understandable. We enjoyed reading the other 2 separately and then coming together and reading this one with them both together and seeing how it is much called us suckers, but we do buy it.
Nice. I like it. Good answer. Nice and thorough. I appreciate that very much. How about other groups? Did anyone else have something different reaction to this article? Yeah, I will be honest with you all. When I assign new readings, I'm often doing them with you all. So I read this very recently as well. And I found it really enjoyable and interesting. I hadn't been exposed to this type of theory before. So I thought it was really great to see how they tried to sort of explain. I was almost like a Freudian thing, right? Like kind of trying to explain everything about personality, certainly maybe not development, but still talking about like, how do these traits form, right? And yeah, we've got the big 5, but there are other traits. So how can we analyze that? So I really enjoyed this, and I'll definitely keep using this one. And it's much better than the one I got rid of. So I'm glad for that. Alrighty, group 4, question 4. Now that you may be slightly confused after considering all 3 readings, what is your group's final opinion, at least at the moment, about personality traits? Are they important? Are they necessary? And explain your position. And group 4 was Amanda E, Bianca, Shai, Hermina, and Savasia.
Sorry, I was talking this whole time while my microphone was muted.
Oh, I hate that. I knew that today. You just feel dumb when you do it.
I really do. So I said that we all ultimately believe that traits are important and necessary. Personally, I think that it's helpful to understand their cause, but it's not really necessary. Like, you're not going to understand why everyone reacts the way they do for everybody that you meet. But ultimately, it can help you predict that person's behavior, what to expect from them as far as like disposition goes, and how you could interact with them. So like whenever I was in Airman Leadership School, they had us do the lenses quiz to like find out what color you are and like how, you know, that can like affect your leadership style and how you interact with your subordinates. And like it kind of created though like cliques in the class, like all of the golds would stick together, all the greens would, all the orange people would be like, oh, we're the only ones who like to have a good time. And while that's not necessarily true, in that people just show like, I guess, higher aptitudes for different personality traits, like, and it can be taken too far, it does help to know like how people, for example, value completing tasks on time and things like that.
As you were talking, it reminded me of, I don't know if you all in this class have heard of this experiment, but there was, I think it was just an elementary school teacher who did an experiment where she separated kids by the color of their eyes and like gave preferential treatment to one set of eyes. And
Oh yes, the blue eyes versus the brown eyes.
Mhm. Yeah, and it was basically about, sort of pointing out how stupid racism is, or how stupid doing things by gender is, right? But kids got really into it, exactly like Amanda's saying, right? Like group identity is a big deal for humans. Like it's the reason why people buy flags and jerseys for their sports teams, even
The
though
biggest, strongest group will survive.
right, right, yeah, there's like this instinct to do that. We love to group together. We love to have things in common. So yeah, it can get pretty cutthroat pretty quickly, right? In academia, you certainly see that. You see that among, people who really adhere to these theories strongly. But then you also see the flip side in academia, where there are those of us who are like, it's cool, let's all just be friends and we can have civil discussions. So
The funny part was that all of us that scored really high on the gold one, which is like conscientiousness, basically, we were the ones who were like, doing the organization and leading the discussions and doing the writing on the board because our handwriting was the neatest. Usually it was me, but I think they picked me because I was the only girl.
of course. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting research about women being asked to do like office housework, essentially, like take notes and things like that. Super interesting. Thanks for sharing that story. Other groups, what did people think? Are traits important? Are they not?
We I forget if it was in the book or an article, but we referred back to where that guy was talking about he was at a dinner party and he was assessing like personality traits, and then ultimately, you find out you can't figure out somebody's personality based on one situation. So we kind of talked about that, like we think that they're important, obviously, but unless you see somebody in every type of situation, how are you really going to know their complete personality?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Carly. I threw it in the chat for anyone who's like, oh, I want to refer back to that reading. It's McAdams. It's in the Pieces reading, Pieces book. Yeah, I'm totally with you. That's such an interesting reading, which is why I assign it every semester. But yeah, the idea that we look at things in particular ways, right? And it's better, obviously, to apply science to that is good. Yeah, and we've got to have I want to just say functional, but really organized, right way to look at something. Yes, variability, but their consistency. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. This is the reason why, for example, we don't diagnose kids with ADHD unless they have it in more than one situation. Because like if you're only seeing it at school, it might just be something about the learning environment isn't working for them. If you're only seeing it at home, but they're fine at school, right? It's clearly not ADHD. There's something in the home environment that causes them to be distracted. So seeing that consistency is really important for diagnoses, as well as looking at personality. And same thing with personality disorders, which we don't cover in this class, but if you take abnormal with me next semester, I do cover. But those are really hard to diagnose because it's essentially like you want to see that consistency. And obviously, when you're a therapist with someone, you only see them in your office, right? So you sort of have to rely on their self-report, which is not always reliable in general for people, but particularly for someone who has a personality disorder. So that can be a struggle. In fact, when I was a grad student in our training clinic where we didn't have to rely on insurance, we were not allowed to diagnose someone with a personality disorder until we'd seen them for at least 3 sessions, because they were like, you need much more information to be able to do this. However, unfortunately, if you are a clinician working in a place that takes insurance, you need a diagnosis by the end of the first session, which is typically only an hour. So you have to get really good at diagnosing those things really quickly. So I did it on my residency year, but it wasn't fun, right? You have to be just very pointed in a way that you typically don't like to be in your first meeting with someone. So, any other thoughts about traits? Are they a thing? Should we care? Alrighty. Well, you all did fantastic today. Great discussions, but I think we're at the point that I'm getting to with my other classes as well, which is we didn't get a fall break and it's starting to show, right? Where like people just don't have as much energy. So I'm going to let you all go about 5 minutes early because there's no point in dragging this out and we're all just exhausted. Use that time to do whatever you need to do to refresh before the next thing you need to do today. And I will see you on Friday and we'll start talking about social cognitive learning theory. It has like 20 names. Basically, it's like behaviorism expanded. So I will see you all on Friday. I'll stick around in case anyone has any questions.
Have a good day.
You too.
Have a good day.